This conference will now.
Okay, very good. So as long as you can still hear me, let me know. Put things up on the chat anytime you have questions, and we'll get moving. So last week was the business issues meeting. If you guys don't remember, OAR has 2 conferences a year. One in the spring is for the spring governance, and in the fall is the general conference that is open to a lot of people. A lot of people come from all over. The spring is basically for people who serve on committees. And I've served on the Business Issues Committee for quite some time. We meet twice a year. This year we did it through teleconference, through Zoom. That was my first experience with Zoom, and it was interesting. It was a little bit different. It's, the technology is we're all learning it as we move forward. At the Business Issues Conference, they have people from different industries within real estate around the country, as well as people from key components, key areas, talk about things. So at this Business Issues meeting, which we had via Zoom, the first person we had was the Real Estate Commissioner, Steve Strode. Steve Strode happened to be in our office earlier this year. Was it early this year or late last year? Very great person Steve is. He has been the OAR president in the past, so he comes to being in charge of the real estate agency from the perspective of having been a realtor in the past. Very, very good person, has a lot of good things to say. He's young, totally different perspective of coming into a state office, a state position as a head of the real estate agency. He is a non-political person. He works on behalf of the governor. So it's a totally different perspective. When he was the OAR president, he was an advocate for housing. So he has to rethink the way he deals with things. Part of the real estate agency is involved with obviously enforcement. And so if people who have been to the OAR conferences in the past, we've had reports from the real estate agency by Selena Barnes. She is the head of enforcement. She's the one who comes to the conferences and talks about people who've done things wrong. And she's wonderful. Unfortunately, she resigned. And now, because they are short-staffed due to the COVID hiring freeze, and because of that, in March, April, they extended the renewal of your CE credits because they recognize also that it's going to be harder for us to get our CE credits in time. Gave 30-day extension on the CE credits. That does not change the fact that if you have a renewal this month, you still need to pay your fee. You still need to file for having done your renewal with the state, but you're given until the end of May to do your CE credits if you don't have them done. But you still have to file for your renewal. That's really important. The other thing that's real interesting is that because of COVID-19, testing has stopped for new licensees. This is not only in the state, this is across the nation. So there is no new licensings being offered testing nor fingerprints. They hope to get this started again by April 30th, but I don't know. They also had hoped to have new advertising rules in place by now, and this has been delayed because of COVID-19 until fall again. The new advertising rules are going to pertain to people who are dealing in teams, team membership and things like that. That's the reality of what we're dealing with, and the rules have to be adapted to take on to consideration the reality of the world in which we have a lot of teams operating. Remember, right now, any advertising that is done in the state has to have the name of the broker, their title, be it broker or principal broker. It also has to have the name of the brokerage as part of it. Also, with any electronic marketing, you also have to have licensed in the state of Oregon. But we also have to take into consideration the fact now that we have teams, and so they're trying to get that all in place. So that was basically Steve Strode's report. The next report was done by Jeremy Rogers. He is the head of the Political Action Committee with OAR. He's also an attorney. And he gave his report in the legislative session. And this was the mini session, the short session. During that time, there was only 2 bills passed at all. And then there was the walkout. Remember, there was the Republican walkout. So that eliminated any additional bills to be passed. A couple of things that they have on their radar is the fact that the governor is pushing for a real estate transfer tax. that obviously will be a big deal for everybody if it does pass. And that is something that OER is heavily lobbying against. There's also a big push to provide housing for the homeless. And I don't know how that will be quantified or how it will become a reality. That's one of the things that they are pushing. Again, this did not pass, but because of the short session and because of the walkout. Another thing that OER really does want is the rural ADUs. And this actually got through a key committee. That was a big deal, but it was stopped with the walkout. But because it went through a key committee, it should pass in the future. That's a big deal as far as real estate. We know we've been talking about that for some time, allowing ADUs on rural property. It would make a big difference for a lot of our buyers and sellers. Also, there is a report that state revenues are expected to be down as much as $5 billion. That's with a B, $1 billion. And we know that the state has to balance its books, and so that will be an impact to other people. Oh, please, guys, I just got a note. Please make sure you've muted your mics. Please make sure you mute your mics. Thank you. We'll have an opportunity to unmute your mic later when we're talking, but if you mute your mic, that way we don't get a lot of background noise. The other thing is something we don't recognize in Oregon, but it would be very helpful with the COVID-19 issue is accepting online notarization. What they said, because of COVID-19, they are accepting it if other states allow it. So in other words, if your client is signing online in another state, they will accept that here in Oregon. Remember, when we have our signings, the expectation is you have wet signings, meaning that your client's actually physically putting pen to paper. But right now, because of the COVID-19 issues, this is really hard to do sometimes to get people actually to an escrow office to sign in person. So if it's in another state and they're doing it there, that's good for the online notarization. Still not accepted in Oregon. They're really encouraging it to happen in the future. Also, there has been restrictions on evictions for tenants, as we know. They have a 3-month moratorium on evictions. So that was basically Jeremy's report. This, I think, is extremely helpful information. The industry response to COVID-1, we have a whole lot of phenomenally helpful links here. And let me click on the one that I want you to see here. This is going to the Oregon Association of Realtors homepage. And on the very first homepage is the OAR's guide to COVID-19. Please be aware that what we do to keep on operating through this pandemic is tied in to what our associations are giving us, and their direction is so helpful. So if we click on this, and you guys can go here anytime you want. There's all kinds of information regarding COVID-19. Look, here's a brand new one today, April 15th, financial webinar. So there's a webinar conducted with this going on right now. There's also, yesterday there was an OAR launching a COVID resource hotline, which is very helpful. So there's information that we can all do. There's talk here about the Small Business Act, Paycheck Protection Program, pandemic unemployment assistance, all this sort of stuff. Helpful information. Also, the coronavirus guides. So here are guides. For instance, if you have information from clients who are asking about their landlords, how can I stay in compliance with COVID-19 rules and regulations if I'm a landlord? So here's a helpful guide on that. Also, financial relief for individuals and businesses. This is helpful information. How to operate during a coronavirus. And then here, this is something I have shared with you guys also, the OAR buyer advisory for the COVID-19 and the seller advisory for COVID-19. These need to be reference tools that we utilize as we conduct our business going forward. This is really important information. So it's at your fingertips just through links right here. So just be aware of that. And I have included here, excuse me, right here, these links. So if you're interested, I mean, these are the things I showed you here, but this is the main one here. Go to the Oregon Association of Realtors and get that information. So helpful stuff here. Now, the next group of people talked about market activity. And we, of course, I reported on Central Oregon, but basically this is across the state. Right now, everyone's seeing a decrease in showings. Showings are way down. Showings are way down. There's also some concerns that qualified buyers may not be qualified in the near future. We're already dealing with some of that within our own brokerage. We've had a couple of people, like right up to the day of closing, all of a sudden they've lost their jobs. It's the reality of what we're dealing with, and it's challenging. So there's that. Also, higher end lending is harder, and we'll go into that a little bit more. The next person we had to discuss things was Evan Swanson. He gave a very interesting information. He is a lender and talked about what's going on with lending practices. So right now, the benefit is with the, I can't call it a stimulus thing, they call it the federal government pouring the trillions of dollars in. There's actually extra liquidity right now with the Fed having stepped in there. That makes a big difference for people. But a concern right now is forbearance. And if you guys don't know what that means, forbearance is basically when you're paying a mortgage and you can't pay. It's basically you're not making your payments. And you ask your lender, can you delay my payments? Would you please not give me a break right now? And part of this is a lot of people are going to be moving into the forbearance, asking their lenders to delay that. It's not to say that they're giving a relief from their mortgage. Their mortgage payment would be tacked on to the end of their loan, most likely. But right now, as of this morning, actually, we heard on the news, there's been 2 million Americans who have been requesting forbearance, delay in their mortgage payment. When I did this, the Evan Swanson reported only 2.5% had applied, but they estimate there'll be as many as 25% of Americans asking for forbearance, a delay in paying their mortgage payment. The problem with forbearance is that if you're dealing with a servicing company, say a mortgage servicing company, and a lot of loans are handled that way, the servicing company is still obligated to pay the interest payments and any insurance, property taxes, any sort of thing that they do normally collect. They are still obligated to pay that. We believe it's going to be a total of $70 billion that is going to be held back in the forbearance. But with the servicing companies having to pay the interest and any sort of property tax insurance that they collect, they have to make that payment even if they don't have money coming in. The problem is those servicing companies only earned $10 billion in profit last year. So if the forbearance is going to cost $70 billion, servicing companies only have earned $10 billion. From last year, there's issues. How is this all going to work out? And it's an unknown right now. So we're dealing with that. Also, non-quantitative mortgages have gone. So in other words, anything that's not government-backed is disappearing because the non-government backed loans are backed by investors. And right now, a lot of them have little appetite for risk. So that's why we're looking at jumbo loans disappearing. And that's something to be aware of. Just know that jumbo loans are having, if you're dealing with something that, a deal that may involve a jumbo loan, really have a heavy duty discussion with the lender. Make sure that loan is still going to happen. You may want to also be proactive on that if you're representing a buyer who's going to be using a jumbo loan. Make sure whoever's providing them that jumbo loan is still going to be doing that at the point of time when we come to closing. It's a concern. Also, because of what's happening, there's a higher credit requirement for FHA, VA, and USDA. The credit requirement for these was as low as 580 a short time ago. Now it's closer to 660 or higher, just because of concerns, what's going on with lending. There's also a change with verbal confirmation of employment. It used to be it was within 10 days of signing. Now, because of all these layoffs, it's within 3 days of signing. And also be aware that for unemployment benefits counting towards your loan, that's only if you're doing seasonal work. So if someone is regularly being hired on for seasonal work and they have a record of it, that can apply towards their loan. But if this is a brand new thing, now they're on unemployment, most likely they will not be getting that loan, and that unemployment benefits would not count towards any sort of new loan. So be aware of that. It was a very interesting discussion. He was very, very good at what he had to say. Now this was a Portland appraiser, Jim Baumberger. So that was the next person who spoke. He talked about the differences, and we had our own information from Eric Chapin, who did a great job on that. But he talked about the differences between refinancing appraisals and purchase appraisals. And refinancing, as we know, is up 144% according to him. That's huge because we know with this low interest rates, people are getting refinances. Unfortunately, according to Jim, and maybe Eric can talk about local here, the appraisal requirements with a refinance are the traditional. You have to go into the home, you have to measure the rooms, you have to physically inspect, all that sort of stuff. With purchase appraisal, they're giving more flexibility, sometimes just exterior viewing of the property, maybe even some table work for them. So there's some flexibility. And again, Eric he's our expert locally for us, and he can give us acknowledgement about that. But this is what Jim Baumberger talked about. So now also with the title industry impacts and responses, Rich Bailey with FATCO gave his input. He said that the escrow is very, very busy right now with refinances. Makes sense. We know that new sales are down, but refinances they're very busy with. Right now, 80% of FATCO's employees are working remotely. On this last thing, he said construction loans are hard to find, which is true. I called COBA yesterday just to talk with them and find out some information, and they told me that some custom home builders are busier than ever before right now. However, they also confirmed that residential construction loans right now are very difficult to get. Residential new construction loans. They said, however, there's a boost in commercial construction, and they're seeing that those types of loans seem to be happening, according to COBA locally. So we'll see how this all shakes out. Just don't know. Property management update. This is a property manager from the Portland area, Jessica Tyndall. She again talked about forbearance, and again she talked about forbearance in property management right now. So basically, she was saying that it's 6 months for tenants. For owners, so these are landlords who have mortgages to pay, the new laws or the new packages that are in place will allow for 3 months for them not to pay their mortgage, but tenants 6 months not to pay the rent. So, and with a 3-month moratorium for evictions. So, and she's coming from this perspective as a property manager representing landlords. She's saying tenants are being protected while landlords are not. So there could be a financial impact to landlords if tenants aren't paying their rent. Obviously, if they have no jobs, they're more likely not to be paying their rent, and you can't evict them for non-payment of rent. And according to Jessica, they have 6 months in which they're being granted not to be able to pay the rent. And so it obviously all the things do not line up. And this is a moving, fluid issue, and ultimately we don't know how they're all going to shake out. But something to be aware of. Now, that was basically what we reported on at the business issues. We went on for over 2 hours, and we could have gone longer. Some of the final reports on flood insurance were just postponed just because we ran out of time. Lots of discussion, lots of give and take. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with national. Think about national as a pause button on the American economy, and that's true. Now, if you think about what happened when we had our last Great Recession, when the housing market tanked, that was all tied into heavy-duty lending practices, which were terrible. People were getting loans who should never have qualified for loans, which normally in today's market would never qualify for loans. That was like a tornado. It destroyed the housing market, and it's taken years to recover from this. In national terms, this pause button is more like a heavy snowstorm. We talked about that when this whole thing first hit. It's like a heavy snowstorm. Everything is kind of on hold. But when you release the pause button, we should be able to recover. We really should. Think about it. This, of course, was from as of April 1st, so some of these predictions may have changed, but this is the thought process of some of the movers and shakers in the world right now, in the country. Look at what's happened. They're looking at first quarter, things were going well, and then it tanked. But they're anticipating as we come out of this, what they call a V-type recovery. And this is Goldman Sachs, they're at Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan. They're all looking at a potential, this is their predictions, a V-type recovery. Now, again, as of April 1st, again, this is all fluid. This is 2 weeks ago, their thought process, but this still is what some people are thinking. And look at what's happening to the stock market, up and down, left and right, all over the place. But if we can get out from underneath this stay at home, if businesses can start working again, we anticipate that we're going to come back to where we were. This is what a lot of the financial institutions are thinking. So in economic trends with the pandemic, we've looked at history to look at some things. For instance, according to Harvard Business Review, it's worth looking back at history to place the potential impact path of COVID-19 empirically. In fact, these shapes monopolize the empirical landscape of prior shocks, including the epidemics such as SARS, the 1962 H3N2, the Hong Kong flu, the 1958 H2N2, the Asian flu, and the 1918 Spanish flu. So this is historical, what's happened in the past. And according to Harvard Business Review, who's looking at these sort of things. So something to think about here. So are we in a recession? People are saying, you know, a recession, the definition is 2 quarters in a row, in 2 quarters in a row of negative economic growth. So can we be? Potentially, yes. But does that equal a housing crisis? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If we look at history, very interesting here. So housing during recent recessions, look at this. We've had recessions in 1980, 1981. They weren't given a name. Those were ones tied in with the Arab oil embargo. That was around the time that Jimmy Carter lost it. And it's also the Iranian hostage crisis. Remember those times? Those of us who are old enough to remember that. We were living with inflation of 15, 16%. Jimmy Carter did not get reelected. That's when Ronald Reagan came on board. But we were in a recession for those first few years of his presidency. But we still had housing growth. In 1991, that was the dot-com bust, and we had housing recession of 1.9%. 2001, that's 9/11. We still had housing growth. And then, of course, 2008, that was the big one. That was the housing recession. And again, housing, in this case, that was tied into, the recession was caused by housing. So it's a different thing. But all these other recessions that we've had in the past, housing is done fine with. So I like to really kind of focus a little bit on 2001, and that was 9/11. So what 9/11 had in common with what's happening today is that this shock has also generated fear, angst, and anxiety among the general public. People avoided crowds then as they believed another terrorist attack was coming and are acting the same way today to avoid getting sick. The same parts of the economy are under pressure: the airlines, the leisure, the hospitality, restaurants, entertainment, consumer discretionary services in general. And that's from David Rosenberg, the chief economist of Luskin, Sheff and Associates. Interesting thought process. We all remember 9/11. Airplanes stopped flying. They're not flying now. People were scared. People were scared. But it was like a massive event. Everything stopped and then came back. So are we like 2008? Are we like what happened today versus what happened in 2007 when the housing crisis, 2008 when housing crisis happened? No, we're not. In 2007, you guys remember, we were in flipping homes. We were in rob Peter to pay Paul. When you entered into contract, by the time that house closed, 30 to 45 days later, that house was worth $10,000 more. People were flipping, making money. We had inventory out the wazoo. We had so much inventory. People were building houses as quickly as they possibly could, and people were buying them. Now, months of inventory for homes for sale in 2007 was 8.2 months. This is national. Today, it's 3.1 nationally. In Bend, in March, 8.1 months based upon closed sales. In Redmond, 8.1 months based upon closed sales. In Prineville, in Sisters, in Madras, in Lapine, less than 2.5 months in all of them. Central Oregon, we have no inventory. This is not 2008. We have no inventory. And so again, another question is, how will unemployment impact housing? What about those job losses? How is that going to impact housing? So I think this graph is really, really good. And this was as of April 3rd. Now we don't have the most recent stuff here, but this is who's lost work. Of the people who've lost work, 59.5% are people in the food services and drinking places. We're talking about servers and bartenders. So these people are out of work. We also have 4.1% are construction workers. Yeah, that's a hard one, but it's true. Now, 6.1% healthcare office workers. I know my sister is a nurse at a hospital that does an awful lot of knee and hip replacements. All those elective surgeries are on hold. She's having a very sketchy work schedule herself right now. She was supposed to go in to work. They called her, said, well, they don't need her. Things are slow for people in the healthcare industry. I know dentists are not working. Everything elective is on hold. Also, childcare day workers, 2.7% are out of work. Obviously, with the kids home, there's no need for daycare workers. Temporary help services, 7.1% of those are out of work. That makes sense. You know, people are not working. People have been furloughed. There's not need right now for temporary help. Retail, 6.6, retail stores, trade stores. And then, of course, the accommodation industry, hotels, people tied in with hotels and rental cars and things like that. And then the additional 9.8% are other. So we put a pause on the economy. When we put the play button going, these people are going to go back to work. It may be gradual. It could be all of a sudden. Think about what will happen if all of a sudden everyone's back to work. Our food services will be back operating. People will be going back to eat and going out to dinner. All of our healthcare workers are going to be back to work. Our construction workers will be back on track. In the retail, all of our retail businesses will be up and going again. It's going to happen. It definitely will. So that's something to think about too. What are the unemployment predictions? If you compare against the Great Depression, the Great Recession, and the current crisis, and this is using Goldman Sachs predictions for the current, and which are among the most bearish. Look at the Great Depression. During that time, it was pretty awful for people, up to 24.9% unemployment in 1933. Really bad. During the recession, and that's new. I mean, that's something all of us have lived through. The worst time was 9.9% in 2009, and we all know people who lost work. I know my husband was out of work. It was tough. The current crisis right now, we're predicting, according to Goldman Sachs, that we may be up to 15%. Some other people are less bearish on everything, but I heard someone today say 20%. I don't know, but Goldman Sachs, who is very bearish on it all, is saying by 2021 we'll be back to 6 to 8%, and 2022 5%, 2023 4%. They're thinking we're going to be back with the start button again, back to normal trends. It took a long time during the recession of 2008 to 2013 before we dropped below 5%. So they're saying by 2022 back to 5%. So here's the question. Knowing what's going on right now and thinking about the fact that we think this is more like a snowstorm, a big snowstorm. It could be a blizzard that's bearing things for a period of time, as opposed to a tornado when everything is broken and needs to be rebuilt. We got to be smart, patient, and safe. And remember that home ownership is an important source of wealth creation, enabling current homeowners and succeeding generations to move up the economic ladder. We all think this is going to happen again. We all know, we all believe in in home ownership. This is what we do. This is how we earn a living. It is part of what we all believe firmly in. So what can we do? We have 3 things we can do. We can, number 1, prospect for leads. We can, number 2, nurture the leads, or number 3, close the leads. Right now, closing the leads is a little challenging. That's challenging. We can still close them. It's harder than it's been before, but we can definitely prospect for leads and nurture the leads. That's something we can be doing and living with every single day. And when I go onto our company website and I'm looking at what people are doing and communicating with leads they received years ago, and they're active again on there, that is so encouraging to me to see that, because I can see you guys are working and trying to do what you can to generate your business for the future too. This is huge. Which brings me to the next thing. I wanted to talk about being seen. So nurturing leads, receiving leads, a lot of that is through being seen. And I wanted to share how you can actually do that very, very well. You guys have known that what I've been doing this year since started January, something new. We've always been putting your listings out in social media. As part of what we do, we put it out in Facebook, Twitter. We also put it out in Craigslist. We've still been doing that for a long time. But I've also been boosting your listings. And the way I do that is, once we put a Facebook post together, and this is one that we did about 6 days ago for Liz's listing on her West Hills listing there. I put this little picture together, and I've been doing that for all of them. So, because I'm also wanting to present Liz out there, I'm trying to show the broker, you know, whoever has a listing, who they are. But then I also I put it out there, post it like we normally would, but now I'm boosting it. Now, what I mean by boosting it, I'm putting an ad together. And the ad I'm putting together is running for 5 days, just 5 days. I'm putting $2 a day, so a total of $10. That's all I'm spending. And I'm putting it out into certain key areas so that people will really see this ad. And you can see the ad finished up yesterday. And during that time, 1,650 people were reached. We had post engagement. That means people actually looking at and clicking on the post of 71 link clicks. So 197 people actually looked at this thing. We have a lot of likes. We have a lot of loves. We have someone who is just a mean, vicious, angry person. And actually, I've looked at this person. I've blocked her from seeing anything else that we've done. I just did that at the end of the day yesterday. But the thing is, this is being seen out there. And people are looking at Liz, and they're noticing Liz. They're noticing this listing. I sent this information back to Liz. Hopefully she is sharing it with her client so that they can see all the work that's been done. Now, I'm also, when I link it back, I'm linking it back to the company website. This is something that you guys could do yourself with your own listings. So let me show you this to you here. So I wanted to get here up on, I had this all set up here. I don't know what happened to it. So I'm going right now into Core, into Rapid-Tony. And by the way, we are still on schedule to flip over to Flex the end of the month. But one way you can actually share your listing, and everyone knows this, is through the Facebook link in Core. The reason why people would do that, it's easy. Let's go to Joe's listing right here. The new one that he has on Via Cambria, Tuscany Pines. So you can share it through this little button right here. If you do that, if I click this button, I'm going to share it from MLS. What I'm doing is easy enough to do. But if you look at the URL right here, it's core. So if someone clicks on this when I share it to Facebook, they'll be on core, which is something. If they can see the information about the listing, that's well and good. However, I don't think that's a great idea if you're trying to get people to notice more than the listing. Meaning, if say I'm Joe, I want them to get to see who I am. The better thing to do is to get them back to your website. So the way you would do that, so I'm going here to Tina, and I'm going to pull in Tina's new listing from her website. So here's Tina's listing on her website. I'm pulling this up here from her website. I am going to hit this button that says share to Facebook. Now, what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to share it. Sometimes if the picture doesn't load initially, guys, what you need to do is you got to X out of this and do it a second time. You got to get the picture to show. Otherwise, when you post, you won't have a picture and no one's going to look at it. If you see here, the URL now is tinaroberts.benpremierrealestate.com. When someone goes back to this, they will be on Tina's website. This is a much better way of sharing your listing, because if they're on core, they're on MLS. If they're on Tina's site, they can search. There's a way you might be able to capture that person. So I'm going to share this now on a page I manage, which would be your business page, whatever your business page is. I don't have access, obviously, to Tina's business page, but if I were Tina, I would be sharing it on Tina's business page. So I'm going to post something about this. Click here to learn more about this great new listing on Fargo. And again, whatever you wanted to say, call me Tina's phone number. And then often I would put in little things like Tina Roberts, hashtags, things that would really be showing up more, things like that. When I then post it, and I'm going to go ahead and post this, it's going to show up on my Facebook page. So now I'm on Facebook, so I'm going to open this up. That was from Core. When I go onto Facebook, and it's a little slow loading, apologize for that. Get onto Ben Premier, because I posted it on Ben's Premiers. It'll show up on this. And I want to show you how to boost it, because when you post it on your Facebook page, that's great. People who like your Facebook page will see it. If you don't have a lot of followers, however, that's going to be limited. It's only going to show up to the people who are on Facebook at the point of time when you post it, who like your page. They'll show up in their wall. But for people who are not on Facebook at that point of time, who would normally be following you, they're not going to see that unless you actually put an ad together. So the way you do the ad, it's still loading here. It's calling up and turning and turning. Okay, so here it is. This is what we did. So I'm going to hit this button here that says to boost it. When the boost button pops up, here's how you do this. Click here to learn more about this. I always do this, learn more. And what I put down on the learn more is a link to your post. Automatically, the Learn More button, if they push on this, it'll pull up the post here on Tina's page. That's important. If for some reason you're putting a photo in there that is not that, if you put a photo that is not the linked thing, you'd have to actually put the URL of the link, which is like this thing right here. You put that in there. Now, this is the next thing. This is what causes a lot of problems here. You guys have to hit this button for special ad category. This is something new that Facebook has put in place. It's due to some lawsuits they had, because this is housing. We have to hit the button for housing. And because it's housing, certain things are automatic here about who we're going to be able to see within our audience. So I'm going to edit that. It's pulling up things that I've already put in there before, but the age of 18 to 65 plus, basically everybody in the sun, is going to be pulling up there. That's because of the lawsuits that Facebook has had to go through, in which you can't discriminate. We used to be able to say, well, I think that the buyers for this particular house would be probably people, say 35 to 60, and I could target just people who are 35 to 60, who live in Bend or who live in a certain area. And I only wanted to target out 5 miles from the house. Because of these lawsuits now, we have to say 18 to 65. It can't be changed, you see that? And we can't change 15 miles. I can make it bigger. I can go out further than that. I can go out to 50 miles if I wanted to, but I can't go smaller than 15 miles. We used to use this for geographic farming when we wanted to say I only wanted to go out so far. I could also change it. Instead of saying Bend, I could say that what I want to do is I want to add the location of the street address, 61535 Fargo Lane. And now it's going to go out 15 miles from the actual street address. I'm using that key when I'm doing this for a house that's outside of our general, outside of Bend, because I typically am just keeping in for Bend for any of our Bend listings. But if I'm saying I'm out in Terrebonne or I'm out in Madras, I want to make sure I'm targeting 15 miles outside of Madras from the house. So you can see now how many potential people are reaching by this little thing down here. Potentially we're reaching 55,000 people. It's pretty broad. I can target this down a little bit here too by interests. Now I've already set up, it pulled up automatically people I'm already looking at, but I'm going to get rid of those. And hit this button for suggestions. House, people are interested in a house. I can put in house for people I think that might be interested in that. Homes. I think that's a good idea. Mansion, I don't know if mansion, people have looked at mansion, real estate license, investing. They put up suggestions of people who you think might be interested. Obviously, targeting 18-year-olds is kind of a waste of money when you consider that most 18-year-olds wouldn't be able to afford this house. So you can target it down to people that you think would be more interested and more likely to be purchasing in here by putting in these people have to be within this age group and have the interest of first-time buyer, FSBOs, homes.com, house hunting, houses, land houses. You can target a lot of specific people. When you do that, it'll tell you how many potential people could see your ad. So when you're happy with what you've got, you can save it. And now you've targeted, it's telling you who you've got. I would always use this recommendation for automatic placements. So Facebook will allocate based upon who you're targeting, the time of day that you want to run this. You set up here how long you want your ad to run, 5 days. You can run it 6 days, 7. Realize that the minimum that Facebook will allow is $1 a day. And then you set your end date, how much money, and down here it'll tell you how many people you're expecting to reach during that time frame. 400 to 1,200 per day. That figure will go up tremendously if people share your listing. So if they share it on their own Facebook page, if they share it on, they share and then other people share, it will go up. And then here's where you put in your visa information. And when you're done with it, you hit boost, and that's it. Facebook will review your ad to make sure there's no violation of fair housing at all connected in this, and then they'll post it during that time frame. The benefit of doing this is that when people click on this, they're on your website as opposed to MLS. They would be on your website looking at this, and potentially at that point also connecting with you and using your website to search for real estate. That is the benefit of all this. And I think it's a great, I'm canceling this because I'm not hitting that active, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this because it's not a good post for me. This was just showing this to you. I'll delete it later. But that's kind of what I wanted to show, because you could also say I'm on Tina's website again, and I want to send her, I want to be talking about Bend information. I could send this as my URL back when I'm posting this on a picture I'm posting about Bend. Want to learn more about Bend? Contact me. I can do that about anything. Say I wanted to say, search all Broken Top. Click here. I would do the same thing using this URL, and I could get people back to my website. The benefit of doing this is getting people to see you. They're using your website. Remember, this is a lead capture website. If they're using your website, they're hearing about Tina. They're going to Tina's homepage, learning about Tina. They're looking here. Once they hit the second or third picture for detail, they're now getting that pop-up saying, I want to learn about, I need to register. And remember, when they register on your subdomain website, that lead stays with you. So how are you allowed to select your audience, Leah? You had questions here. Whenever I try to boost, they tell me I'm in violation of fair housing, and they choose everyone in the 15-mile radius, whatever their age. And again, what I did was you target it down. You do it through those suggestions, you browse. And you have to make sure you've also clicked that thing there to say it's special, and you've clicked that box for housing. So again, we can also help you guys. Say you have something special you want to talk about and you want to boost out there. Jackie, your Homes for Heroes affiliation. You have a page, I know, on your website regarding that. We could, or you want to add something on your thing and you want to put that out in social media. We can help you do that through this. Again, you would do it through targeted. In the case of Homes for Hero, you may want to target people who are doctors, people who are teachers, people who work in medical field, people, nurses, doctors, like I said, firefighters, police. You can do all that sort of stuff. So you can target people who have certain job interests. That's something that you can do through Facebook. They know it is scary, and I've had discussions with other brokers about this. It's scary how much Facebook knows about people. It is a little scary to think about, but they definitely do. And you can help really target this so you're really reaching the people you want to reach. So I'm at a point here where I can take information and questions. So if you want to ask a question, feel free to unmute your box, your mute button, and then ask your questions and see what we can do. Anyone have questions here? Or if you want to put a message in for chat. Again, if you have an idea of something that you want to do to get yourself out there in social media, please let us know how we can help you. We'd love to be able to help with this. I hope this information was also helpful regarding what's going on with the nation, because it's an interesting time that we're dealing with. Does anyone else have questions on anything? Again, you can unmute your box. If no, feel free just to feel, oh, can I just come in? Yes. Yeah, I'd be happy to help you, Leah. What we could do, if you guys, it can definitely work. We could set up in the conference room. I can use the screen there so we can have our social distance, and be happy to help you set this up on a one-on-one. Happy to do that, Leah, absolutely. And Brad had a good idea too. You can run ads like all homes under 300,000 in Bend. We can help you create a search on your website for all homes under 300,000 in Bend. We can put that as a landing page and help you learn how to do this. Catherine, thank you. I'm glad it was helpful and informative. Anything else, feel free, call me, text me. Happy to chat with you about any of this stuff at any time. So Leah, anytime you want to come in. Thanks, Robert. I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you, Jane. Yeah, I can send you the slides, Casey. Happy to do that. Oh, and Kathy, we're going to need a restaurant. Thank you, Rob. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I miss you guys too. This is so weird. Oh, I'm glad you like the ramen, Danielle. Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, bye, everybody.